Welcome back to Hasbro's Hide. This is me from the future, and I say that because the things you're going to see in this video, this is the result of that. So we've been able to disassemble our rifle. I've already disassembled everything out of the action, but we're able to now get the action off of the barrel, and then we're able to get the rear sight collar off of the barrel as well successfully. So pretty good result here overall. Made a simple tool. You'll see this tool in the video. I bought this and I bought it from Metal Depot, and I'll show you that number if you want to do the same thing. It was a 24-inch section of pipe, of which I cut 3 inches off of it to make this tool to drive it off. The rest of this pipe will slide over the barrel and be used to drive it back on to position. And so if you want to try to make your own, it's pretty simple to do. The one thing you don't see here is once I cut the pipe, then I just put it on a grinder, broke the edge, broke the inside edge, and then I was able to, hit a square against this end of our sight and drive it off. But if you notice right here, there's a pin, and that is pinned to the barrel here. So this you probably can't see, but this collar is well clearanced of the barrel. Okay, so that allows enough room that when this went over it, it would allow the pin to push it slightly sideways when we get that farther forward, and then the pin would not be driven up through the collar and break the collar. So that's something to watch for. You for sure don't want to damage or crack your collar here in doing so. So just one thing I would caution you if you do this is take a file, take a Dremel, something, and go ahead and Dremel yourself a relief groove here that will clearance this on it and mark it from the outside. So when you put this on over it, well, then this pin can just stay in place. Basically it'll almost act like it comes this way when you drive your collar that way, and then you won't take a chance of cracking your collar or causing any damage there. This one was good. It all worked out, but it's because I sort of let it, once it cleared the threads, and I let it walk sideways on this diameter because there's extra play in this, and it worked out. So anyway, just a caution. I want to show you that then from something I've learned from doing this. But our collar then is in great shape, ready to go back on. Action with the action wrench, that was fun to do. It's all kind of cool, right? To me, it's cool anyway, is that this is the original receiver on this barrel, original sight collar on this barrel, etc. from 1942. And I did most of this work in December of 2020. So exactly 78 years later from when this was made, these parts are coming apart for the first time. So kind of cool. I thought you might like to see this, and let's get on and see the work. All right, so now we're going to be taking our action off our old 1903 barrel. This is the Wheeler barrel vise, and so it uses these really strong steel components, springs, etc., big bolts, 1.5 inch bolts, and wooden blocks to pinch down on the barrel. It was recommended in one of the videos also to get a baker's type rosin. So this is Callahan powdered rosin that Midway sells, and so we're going to put that on there in just a minute. I had tried to do it with this Bald Eagle vise, and I really like this vise. It's made well. It's sold by Grizzly. It's inexpensive, about a little more than half the price of this. And it's made well. It's aluminum. It's made well, but I don't know if you can see here, but the barrel just spun. Now, since then, I've gotten in lead shims, and we may use these if we need to wrap around the barrel if you do that. But it probably, if I just had this rosin on it, it might be fine. But the disadvantage is this has pretty much some fixed ranges of diameter, 7/8 up to, I think it's somewhere close to 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, based on the diameter it's already milled in here. Now you could put inserts around your barrel and do it that way. But anyway, so this is made for wood. Since my shop is set up, I have a lot more woodworking equipment than metalworking equipment. I can make these blocks all day long. I can make them tapered, I can make them straight bores, I can do whatever sizes I want. So just got to get some, these are hardwood, they're oak in fact on these. So some good hardwood and use it for these. Easy to make your own blanks. So I got this one instead. And so let me get some rosin on it, and then we'll put the barrel in the vise, and we'll start tightening it up, and then we'll talk about our action wrench. All right, our barrel is in our blocks. Action wrench is on and tight. It goes, this is one off eBay, $80 of shipping or something like that. and it's well made. It's a good solid thing. It's been welded up, and it fits it fairly well. It's like most Mauser actions, though. It sits on the back of this action here on the bottom side of it. So you tighten it up on that flat. I put some blue tape on the other side where it's going to touch it the most, just to, hopefully I won't have to do any you know, touch-ups or redoing of the finish on the action when we're done. The collar, as well as the action and barrel threads, have been soaked in Croil for a little over a week. Okay, so that should be plenty of time. I kept them in a warm area, so it should be able to soak and penetrate well. So hopefully that's enough to help break this loose. To get the oil, though, off of where we grip the barrel, I used a little bit of gun scrubber and just cleaned it up really good, wiped the oil down, sprayed it again, wiped it several times, and you know, sort of get that clean so it bites in real good. So now all we got to do is we got to tighten up our barrel wrench, and they're 1.5 inch nuts, so you need a really ridiculous size wrench to do this. But it's time to tighten them up. So we'll do a little bit on each side and work our way down to where this starts to really compress the wood around our barrel. Try to keep it even and go a little bit each time, each way, and try not to block your vision here too much either as we do it. We'll keep going because this needs to be really secure in order to break this action off of here that's been on here for a long time, almost 80 years, just shy of 80 years. This action has been on here more than likely. So keep tightening it up, just get it more and more snug, and hopefully then this thing will not spin. So that's pretty good. It seems good. And so now we'll put this bar over here, or maybe we won't. It doesn't fit. Okay, we'll revisit putting this bar on here. It's an extension to the action wrench here. We can probably try tapping this though, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. All right, let me mark our barrel so I can see if this thing is actually just turning in the vise. So we'll do that. I'll mark a line at the front of the barrel and a line at the tip here. Doesn't have to be perfect, roughly on the center line there, so we can see if our barrel is rotating, if we have to tighten up even more. So let's keep tapping this and see what we get. Good news, good news, okay? So by just tapping this, our action is turning off our barrel. So we'll keep doing that and just tap it back. All right, so we get some leverage on it. Nope, still not. All right, so we'll keep going. I got a nice, it's a soft, small dead blow, so it won't tear up the wrench and not impart shock really onto that. So and you see our whole action, our barrel has stayed pretty straight, although it rotated a little bit that last time around. So let me bring us back and we'll tighten it up again. All right, I finally got my breaker burr on here and tightened up the vise just a little bit more, and after a couple big loud pops, it's now turning off, no problem. So I can take the breaker bar off, and away we go. Our action is free to turn. So I'll take this action wrench off and we'll show you then what our threads and of our barrel look like. So the Croil did its job. Once I got this tight enough, rosin held it, everything else turned just as it should, came off beautifully. Alright, so I got a little bit closer up. I've taken our action wrench off, and this is our action wrench. Again, you can find this on eBay, and you know, it's just a solid, nice heavy bar welded on, a couple heavy steel blocks, some big bolts, and then relief cut. And this flat goes on the bottom of your receiver, and this clearance is a bump on the side of your receiver. So, you know, really basic but really strong, and you know, a better price than others that are on the market. So once it broke out loose, now you can see what's been going on. So 80 years basically. Well, technically 78 years. Well, it was December of 42. So it is exactly then 78 years that this was put on there, and it has not been off since then, as far as I can tell. And so, but what's really cool is if you see down inside of here, it's just covered in coil. And all I did to get the coil in there is I took a cotton swab, right, and I put a little bit down in from the inside of the receiver here, just at the edge of where the barrel comes up in there. But I knew that wouldn't get too far. So knowing I have to also then take this sight collar off, which will be its own adventure, I'll have to make a couple of tools to do it, because the only ones I've seen out there are like crazy expensive. They want $120, and that's just not going to happen. So I'll make my own tools to come over here and drive this off, and another one to come in the recess and push it back. I think it shouldn't be too bad. But anyway, so what I did was, the front of this, if you know these, there's a like a U-channel cut around the front of this, almost like an O-ring channel cut around the front of this, where your stock comes into it. Well, that goes right against the barrel. So all I did was fill that up a couple times with coil while having it stand up like this, and just let it set a few days, and it would leak down into there and come through all the way into here. So underneath, all underneath this rear sight collar, which has to come off, the oil has been soaking. So that should help us remove this when I go to drive this off. So anyway, yeah, really good news. Just a couple small pops once I get this thing tight enough. You know, you don't know how tight, and so I was not quite tight enough. I tightened it just a little bit more, and then it broke the action free right away. So good news. Barrel's off. Got to get the sight collar off, and then we can start putting the new Criterion barrel on our action. All right, now we're going to try to remove our sight collar. We'll first do it without heat. I'm just tightening up our barrel vise again, just to make sure everything's really good and snug. Now, this is the Wheeler barrel vise, and I've used this rosin, this Callahan powdered rosin, whatever. I got it from Midway, I believe. And that really does help hold the barrel in these wooden blocks. It's really good advice to use that rosin. So let me finish tightening this thing up, but hopefully that's pretty snug. Now, what I've done is, probably hard to see here because this keeps popping off. Let me pop this out of here. Maybe, no, maybe not. So what I've done is sized this pipe. Now this pipe is sized to clear the threads of the barrel, but you have to clear not just the threads of the barrel, you actually have to clear the shoulder of the barrel. So let me show you on this new one because it'll be easier to see. Okay, so we have to clear this outside. The collar slides over this section of the barrel. Now this is our new Criterion barrel, and we have to get it off of this section. It's tapered and it will come off here, but this is where it's held tight. And so this has been setting with coil on it for weeks now, just because I haven't been able to get to this. But this pipe that I'm going to use to drive this off with should do the job. Now this is 1 inch 145 thousandths diameter. Okay, so we have to clear that diameter since that collar's sitting over that. So what I have is a pipe that will cover the outside diameter of the sight collar itself, but clear the inside diameter of the barrel, and that is 1 inch. You can see if we kind of get an average reading here. 1.175 inches on the ID. So I have some clearance there. Now the problem is if you did that and you orbited it off, you could still be driving on the edge of the barrel. You can imagine that you would be using this and it would be hitting the edge of the barrel and not the edge of the collar. So without getting shim stocks, what I've done is build up tape around the diameter, and so you can maybe kind of see that because it's sticking inside of this pipe that I bought, and so that is snug now and fairly centered. You can rotate it and get the idea then, watching this collar, that it is not drifting out of round. So that should hold us in place, I hope. If not, I'll have to get some shim stock and we'll do it a little bit more securely. So now what I'm going to do is use this big old mallet and a wooden block, and we'll try to drive then this collar backwards without using heat, since it's just been soaking there on that. So let's see what we can do. All right, let's see how we're moving it. It is moving it slowly. Right there's the edge shoulder of the barrel showing through there now. So we're moving it. Can kind of hard to see if we're moving it evenly. I think we are, all the way around there. But it's still taking a good bit of force. Now, of course, it's been on there for, what was it, 78 years. So it's not surprising that it's taking force. Plus, our wooden block, of course, is taking a lot of this impact. But I'm trying to do that to lessen shock down through there, making this thing jump. Let's keep going. Getting it square every time I hit it. Alright, check and see how we do. Now I have, of course, already removed the pin at the front on this as well. So it is definitely moving just quite slowly there. Check and see, make sure we're still centered up. It appears like we are, and I'm being careful because we don't want to, you know, like say, damage the shoulder of the barrel. I'd rather not, although I'm probably not going to reuse this barrel. But I don't want to damage the sight, and I don't want to drift up in here and hit this out of place, because our sight, I'm leaving this in there to support, really not the flip up, I could have taken that off, but the base of this in there to support this shoulder here, because a lot of people have cracked these over the years trying to drive this thing off. So let's keep going. And try to do a little bit, use a little bit of patience and keep moving. Let me turn this thing around, see if I can square it up again on the block. Alright, see how we're doing. Yeah, we're definitely moving it. I don't know if you can see that well enough, but that collar is definitely moving now down the sides of our barrel. So we can slide that up on there and be confident that we're not loading off to the side here of our collar. And we'll just keep driving this thing back. Alright, let's keep checking and being safe and comfortable. Looking good so far. Looking like we're hitting it pretty evenly. Now our tape has moved a little bit inside of here, but I think it's still holding us pretty well on our threads. Yeah, because we're over the barrel. Everything there looks good. So we'll keep moving, just slowly, a little bit at a time. All right, once I was assured that this collar then could slide safely over everything here and not damage it, I ran this on up here and got rid of the wooden block and started using the side of my hammer. Now it's probably, you know, not the best thing to do with my hammer, but this isn't expensive. It's a Harbor Freight hammer. And now I can drive it that way pretty well and keep it square, and it's moving really well. So I'm going to have to loosen this up now because I'm going to drive it into the block if I'm not careful. So let me loosen this up, move the barrel out, tighten it back up again, and then we'll be able to get this off without a problem. Okay, I moved the barrel out a little bit, and I've already continued. You can see we're almost off this shoulder. Slide that back up on there, and it's centered up, and then just tap it gently, and we're off. So, yay. We'll take a look at it, but I'm sure by the signs of it here, it's not damaged at all. And we will we'll check it out, clean up our new barrel, and start the installation. All right, a couple things to show you here. Now, our sight collar is off our barrel, and it's no problem. Now, we have this groove that's machined into the barrel. Now, that is for this alignment pin, which helps hold the sight in place, but clocks it really to the extractor port and to keep it square then with the center line top of your barrel. it squares up the sight collar. You can imagine like that. It'll hold it in place, because right here is the pin, if you can see that well. I'll do a close-up here in a minute. But that pin then is what you drive back into here. So once I'll take that out, once this is put back into position, we can clock it. You drive that pin back in from the breech side, and then it'll keep this clocked and held in position. So I'm gonna have to, the new barrel doesn't have that on it for Criterion. It doesn't have that machine mark in it, so that's, or groove. So we're gonna have to take that and machine that into it. So it's not a big deal. I'll have a friend do that. Then you have also on the bottom, the sight collar has this cross pin at the front to stop rotation also, and really stop rotation. The other's for clocking, I believe. So right here is where it goes through there, and you can see then they've cut a small groove for the clearance of that barrel. So we'll indicate these closely, put this on a lathe, clock it from here, machine the groove, clock it from here and come down, and then measure from here, square it up, and then cut this this relief groove. You could probably do this by hand easy enough here. It's not a big deal because the pin will be soft enough to deflect as it goes through. But anyway, so we'll do that before we put our new barrel on. I'll probably end up removing the parkerization on this new barrel here just a little bit too, because it'll tighten that up. I haven't tried that fit yet, but I will here in a minute. But I want to clean this up first. So this is the sight that came off. It's kind of cool if you can see down in there. I don't know if you can see well enough in there, but it's full of oil. All right. That's the croil that's been sitting in there. Now, how did it get in there? Well, I put it around this end, but that's pretty tightly sealed when, you know, the barrel threads are just sticking out there. But it's soaked in then from this end, and so I had just pooled all around this groove where the stock goes in, the handguard goes in, and just let it pool, and had the barrel sitting up like that. I applied just a little bit of heat from a heat gun, nothing enough to distort anything, just to help it get in there, and did that a couple different times, and then just let it set. So that croil is amazing. It got way down in there, all the way down through. Of course, to where the relief groove is for the barrel, well, the taper is for the barrel, but then right down into where it had been press fit. So we'll clean this up. What I'll probably also do is I have a brake hone, and I'll show it to you in just a minute. So it's for small cylinders on brake cylinders, and I come in and hone this just barely. I don't want to change much in the diameter, but I do want to clean up some of the rust and things in there. It's not bad, but it'll just make for a smoother fit. Then we'll test fit on the barrel without removing the parkerization, but I'm really confident I'll have to then remove that as well. So anyway, there's our pin. Came right out, which is nice. You know, it's been sitting there soaking in the same thing, so we'll get that put back in there as well and retain it for record. So yeah, you can go out and buy a tool for this, 120 bucks, or you can just simply cut a piece of pipe off, and I'll list these diameters of the pipe in the video, and just carefully fit it over the outside. You can use tape, or you could use a shim, which might be probably a little better, but this worked fine, and then drive it off appropriately. So then on the other side, when we go to install it, well, I bought a 24-inch pipe, okay, and so it will work in reverse, coming back and driving it on, but it has to be long enough to clear the end of the barrel and to make sure you don't drive and damage the tip of the barrel. So that's fine, but what I have to do also then is I will grind the profile of this sight collar so this drops down into that, so we're not driving onto this thin metal edge. So we should do that. That should work out just fine. Shouldn't be a lot of force putting this back on. We'll just, since everything's cleaned up and not rusted up now, and we'll go forward with that when we get this barrel set up. So the sight, perfectly good. Did not crack the base. Right here is where they damage them a lot, taking them off, so that is good. You can see there it's not cracked. The gaps are all still the same, and the sight still functions just fine, both in windage elevation, of course, but then crosswind still works just fine. So clean up our sight collar, and then a little bit of machining, and we'll be able to move on. All right, here's a closer up view of the sight collar after removal. Of course, this is the barrel threaded in, the chamber end, and we have not damaged then at all. I've gone ahead and removed the pin. But you can see then the base of the sight is not cracked or damaged, anything like that. But then the inside is, pretty clean, but there's still rust in there and a little bit of that croil as well. Now, on the other side of this, let's see if you can see that well. Hopefully you can. Let me turn it just a little bit, might help. There is a little bit of rust here, and in fact wood, compressed wood. And this is where your handguard slides in, okay, and is pressed in contact. Now, I would suspect, I don't know if this is done in the factory, again, this is just my limited knowledge of this when they install the handguards, but I suspect the handguard could move just a little bit here, even with the bands on it. And so someone has come along and make the mark right here and put a little indentation, and that bends this thin steel around the outside into the handguard, so everything kind of tightens up around it. You know, not a big deal. The handguard I have, I can simply press into there, and it's not a big deal. But when we do the barrel installation and that round tube I showed, I may have to relieve that or bend that back out. If I bend it back out, I'll probably heat it up, and we'll see. I'm worried about work hardening that and just cracking that thin bit of metal. But anyway, we're going to have to clean up all this. Then if you can see down inside of here, I don't know how well you can see that now. Let's try that maybe. Right here, get a pointer here. Right here is where your cross pin, your retention pin, goes through. And it comes in right underneath there, and just part of that diameter goes up and touches into the barrel. And so the intent is that it locks the two together. I'll use the original pin that came through it, but if it doesn't perfectly match up, you can use a mild steel, and it will come through and deflect and follow that, and then when you pin it together, it'll hold it just fine. But we'll get this machined up reasonably tight, and we'll drive that thing in there, and it should be perfectly good. But I thought you might like to see that, why that groove is in the bottom of the barrel, because there's not enough metal the way they've done this. But I think obviously they deliberately wanted to engage the barrel as well for retention. So that sight, we get this redone, will certainly be held in place just as well as it was before. We got a lot of cleanup here to do, no big deal. And then we'll run the brake hone in here. Let me get that out, and I'll show you that next. All right, now I'm going to clean up the inside of our sight collar. I'm going to use this Pro brake cylinder hone. You can find these anywhere, but the size though is important. So this is 3/4 of an inch up to 2.5 inches. So it's small enough in diameter that it can do the job. So we'll use that hone. Now I'm going to go ahead and use Croil. It's a really, really light oil to do this with, but it should be fine. And then of course it will break loose anything that is dislodged. We're just trying to remove the rust from the inside and the crud that was in there from 78 years of being bonded to that barrel. So we'll put our hone in there. You just squeeze the hone in, add, like I say again, plenty of oil, and just slowly let it turn and slowly let it advance. Now we're going to advance this. This is from the breech in first. You see that well. And you can only go so far. We'll let that go and then stop and come back out at the same speed. Now you don't need much, and you don't want to go very long. So that should be plenty. Now what we'll also do is do it on this end, because there's a stepped diameter where this hits a smaller tapered portion of the barrel. So again, the same thing. We'll push this in. This is the smallest diameter, so it's a little bit harder to get in there, but you can get it in there. And then once you get the hones to straighten up like that, well then you can turn them. We're not going to turn it very long on this end, just because it doesn't have a lot of surface area, and I don't really want to be removing metal. So let me clean this up, and then we'll take a look at how we've done on the inside. All right, let's take a look inside now. Hopefully you can see this. You'll get this light shining roughly in our direction. So if you can see in there, then all we've done is just very lightly touch the surface. There's not been any significant metal removal. It's just there's a rough finish inside of there, a very rough finish inside of there, and then with all the rust and things that are in there, just need to be cleaned up. So not trying to change that diameter at all. So not very long with that hone. At all, but we have just definitely smoothed it up, and you can feel it's with your finger, it's much nicer. The deeper grooves that were there from the original machining are now smoothed out, and the rust is gone. So here's the same thing. Now this is where we fit onto the front of the barrel ahead of this, well, at the very front of the sight collar. And so again, not trying to move any metal, not anything significant, just clean it up. And so that's good. That should be all set to go, and it should assemble on our rifle well. So next step, get our barrel fit to get this clocked for this. Get a barrel machine to get it fit, and to hit this clocking pin location, and then to lightly relieve it underneath clocking pin location here, and then lightly relieve it where this pin comes through and locks the front of the sight collar. So we'll do that next, and then we'll be able to assemble our barrel.